Hello AP. Today we're going to be reviewing solutions to part writing root position triads worksheet number 2. At this point you should be very comfortable with doing some of these voice leadings following the principles. So let's delve right into it. First measure, G major, 1 to the 6 to the 4. Bass motion moves by that of a third. So you'll have two common tones, retain them in the same voices. So we're going to put the G in the alto and keep it there for the next chord. We'll put the D in the tenor, and we'll move up to an E right here for the tenor. Add our stems, and notice these are the two common tones that are retained in the same voices. Now we have the 6 to the 4 chord. Again, same thing, you'll have root motion by a third, so you'll have two common tones. Keep it simple for success. Retain the common tones in the same voices, just like so. In every case, the root is doubled. Next measure, D minor, the 1 chord to the 4 chord to the 5 chord. So the 1 to the 4 bass motion is that of a fourth, which means you'll have one common tone. Keep it in the same voice. Let's do closed structure. So let's do an F here for the altos, and we'll do a D here for the tenor, and our root is now doubled. That one common tone from the 1 chord to the 4 chord is D. We'll keep it in the tenor, and then the altos will move up to the nearest chord tone, which is a G. From the 4 chord to the 5 chord, you are going to have no common tones, because the bass motion moves by that of a second. Remember that when you have bass motion that moves by a second, that the other voices need to move in contrary motion to the nearest chord tone, to that of the bass. So with that said, tenors are going down, and altos are going down to the nearest chord tone. And I'm not done yet, because I'm looking at my Roman numeral, and it appears to be a capital 5 in D minor, so I'm going to need a leading tone of C sharp, so you need to add the accidental right here by the tenors. Now I'm done. Next measure, I'm in A major. The 1 to the 6 is bass motion by that of a third, which means you'll have two common tones. Here's your one common tone, and your other one, let's put in tenor. Right there, those are common tones between those two chords. And fill in what's missing with the altos. The E and then the F sharp. Then I have a 6 chord to a 2 chord, and that bass motion moves by that of a fourth, which means I'll have one common tone. Let's keep the altos on the F for smooth voice leading, on the F sharp, and we can double the root right there by adding a stem for the tenors. Next measure, E minor, we have the 1 chord to the 5 to the 6. Remember, when you are in minor and you have a major 5 to a major 6th, you have to do irregular doubling. More on that in just a minute. Let's do the 1 chord first. Let's put the altos on the E, doubling the bass. Let's put the tenors on the B. We need a 5 chord. 1 to 5 means that you're going to have one common tone retained in the same voice. That's the B. Keep it in the tenor. What's missing? The D. But we can't call it a D. We have to call it a D sharp because of the capital Roman numeral 5. So we are using harmonic minor. And now the last chord, the 6th chord. That would be C, E, G with a doubled root, right? Well, let's try it with a doubled root. If I put the C here, I've doubled the root, and then I can put the tenors right here on the G. Anyone see a problem? Well, right here is an augmented second that the altos are singing, so that's why that is forbidden. that is an awkward interval that you're never going to want to write and include in your part writing, is for one voice part to sing an augmented second. So, where we would normally double the root here, we're not, to avoid that augmented second. So what do? Quick, easy fix. We'll double the third. The last measure, B flat major. I have a 3 chord to a 6 chord. Bass motion moves by that of a fourth. There'll be one common tone right here in the soprano already. And then you could supply an A to your alto or to your tenors, and you can supply an F to your altos. Next up, we need the 6 chord. The common tone is retained. Move all other voices to the nearest chord tone. Tenors can slide up to a B flat, and altos can slide up to a G. And although that is lots of similar motion, that's okay. There's no part writing mistakes in this example. Now we have the 6 chord to the 5 chord in the key of B flat. That's bass motion by that of a step or a second, which means that you will have no common tones. So the bass is moving down, which means I need to move my other voices upward to the nearest chord tone. So tenors will go from a B flat to a C. Altos will go from a G to an A. Let's keep going. Right here, fill in the alto and tenor parts in these exercises. I'm in the key of E flat major in 3/4. I have the 1 chord to the 6 chord to the 5 chord. 1 to the 6, bass motion of a third. You'll have 2 common tones. Keep them in the same voice. Let's put the E flats in the altos. And the sopranos already have the same common tone. Then I could use the tenor on the B flat and slide it up to the C. Now I have a 6 chord to a 5 chord. Bass motion moves by that of a second, which means I'll have no common tones. Bass is moving down. Other voices should move upwards, contrary to the bass, to the nearest chord tone. And I've doubled the root. Okay, we're still in the key of E flat major. We've got 3 measures to go. Now I have a 5 chord to a 1 chord. Bass motion by that of a fourth, which means I'll have 1 common tone. The common tone will not exist in the same voice because the common tone is a B flat, and here the sopranos are going from the B flat down to the G. So I've got to make this the smoothest voice leading possible without following that principle of keeping the common tone in the same voice. So I can double the root with the altos singing an E flat because they were singing an F, and that's very smooth for them. That leaves me with the tenors, and they can jump to a third from the D to the B flat. That would be fine. Stems up, and I've doubled the root. Now I'm going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. Bass motion by that of a fifth. I'll have 1 common tone. Keep it in the same voice. The common tone is the E flat. Altos are already on it. Tenors can slide up to the C, and I've doubled the A flat, the root. Now I'm going from a 4 chord to a 1 chord. Bass motion by that of a fifth. So here what I want to do is try to keep the common tone in the same voice. But you notice that I can't keep the common tone in the same voice. Well, no, I can. Let me try this. I can do that, and I can do that. That is a little undesirable, though, for the tenors, because they are singing this fourth right here. There might be a different way I can write that, so I'll try it now. What if I put the altos, I'll put it in parentheses, the altos on the G, and the tenors on the E flat. That way the tenors are going from a C to an E flat, which is a third, and the altos are going up to a third. So either way works, because when you go back and you check for all your part writing mistakes and illegal motion, you'll see that there is none. So either of those ways would be acceptable. But however you do it might depend on what you're doing for the next chord. So what I'll do is the next chord is a 1 to a 4, bass motion by that of a fourth, which means that you'll have one common tone. The common tone being the E flat. So let's retain it in the alto. And we could have the tenors singing the bass note, doubling the root. I'll show you how to rewrite it if you were using the notes in parentheses that I put over here in the 1 chord prior to the 4 chord. So if you're going with the G for the altos, then you would probably want to go with the A flat in the next chord for the altos. And if you were going with the E flat, then you probably would stick with the E flat there for the tenor voice. And that's probably how I would write it, is actually the way in parentheses. Now that I look at it, I see it's just smoother, less leaps, and smoother voice writing with common tones. Let's move on. The 4 chord to the 5 chord. That's root bass motion by that of a second. So let's put our F here, and we can put our D here for some nice smooth voice leading. Remember, there are no common tones when you have root motion from 4 to 5, because it's just a second. So if the bass is moving up, in this case it is, then the other voices should be moving downward in contrary motion. Now I'm going to the 4 chord again. That's what that dash, the 5 chord again. That's what that dash means. And I'll double the root with the tenors, and the altos can sing the third, like so. Very tight, close-knit structure right there. And the 5 chord to the 1 chord. Bass motion by that of a fifth. One common tone. Keep it in the tenor. It's the B flat. Make sure that you change your harmonic rhythm to be a dotted half note. Tenor stems up, and I've got to double the root here. And I'm done with that example. Let's move right along to the next one. Now I'm in the key of B minor. Oh, it starts with an anacrusis. How lovely. A quick glance at my Roman numerals tells me that I'm using harmonic minor because I see a capital Roman numeral 5. So let's see. I've got to put a 5 chord of B minor is spelled F sharp, A sharp, don't forget about the sharp sign, C sharp, and I need to double the F. So let's start things off by doing this. Let's put our leading tone there. And let's double the bass with the tenor. Right there, a nice high note. I can't put the tenor on the same note as the bass because then it would be more than an octave between the tenor and alto, so I have to put the tenors up 1 octave, which is totally fine, and that's closed structure. Now I'm going from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. Bass motion by that of a fourth, which means I'll have 1 common tone. But I can't keep the common tone in the same voice here. So my best bet is to have the tenors go down a third and sing a D, and have the altos sing an F sharp. Now I'm going from the 1 chord to the 6 chord. That's bass motion by that of a third. And when that happens, you'll have 2 common tones retained in the same voice. So let's do that now. We'll put a B and then we'll put a G. And I've come to realize that you can't retain the common tones in the same voice because of the way the soprano is moving with the melody. But I've got doubled roots, which is nice. The G is doubled. Now I'm going from the 6th chord to the 4 chord, bass motion by that of a third. And it looks like here I'll be able to keep the common tones in the same voice. Remember, there's 2 common tones because the bass is moving by a third. So I can keep the G here on the alto, and I can keep the B here on the tenor. And that's some really nice smooth voice leading right there. Now I'm going from the 4 chord to the 5 chord, bass motion by that of a second. So you know what that means. There'll be no common tones, and since the bass is moving up, the other voices need to move down to the nearest chord tone. So altos come down to the nearest chord tone, which is an F sharp. And the tenors will come down to the nearest chord tone, which is an A. Don't forget your sharp sign. Look at the Roman numeral, it's capital 5. It's harmonic minor. So we need to raise the 7th and make it an A sharp instead of an A natural. Aha! Now I've arrived at one of those irregular doubling sites because I'm remembering my principle that if I'm in a minor key, and I have the progression of a major 5 to a major 6, that I have to do irregular doubling or I'm going to have that augmented second issue, which I don't want to have. So I'm going to keep that in my mind as I do this. There's the 5 chord. Let's make it the 6 chord. We're going to double the 3rd to avoid the augmented second. Let me show you if we don't double that and we double the root. Right there is my augmented second, which we don't want to do. So that's why I'm going to double the 3rd. And I just doubled the 3rd. Right there, which is the B natural. The sopranos are singing it and the tenors. And then the altos can sing this D, no problem. Next chord, the 6th chord to the 4 chord, bass motion is by that of a third. What that means is you'll have 2 common tones retained in the same voice. But after looking at it, I don't think that it's possible. So we'll move it to the nearest chord tone. Bass is moving down. Let's do some contrary motion here. Altos can move up. And then the tenors can come down and sing that G. So I've got 2 roots, and I've got a 3rd, and I've got a 5th. Now I'm going from the 4 chord to the 5 chord. That's bass motion by a second. That means there'll be no common tones. So if the bass is moving up, move all the other voice parts down in contrary motion to that of the bass. So the F sharp can be shared by both the bass and the tenor. And then my altos can come down and sing the C sharp. And look at that, the soprano already has the sharp sign because that was a given note. And that makes it the 5 chord with the root doubled, F sharp. And what we can do here on the next chord is change the structure around. It's still a 5 chord because you have the dash. And let's do this. Let's make it open structure. F sharp there. And I really don't want to forget that anytime I write an A, I have to make it an A sharp for my leading tone. And the bass is doubled with the alto. That's the root. And now I have a 5 to a 1. And when I have a 5 to a 1, that's bass motion of a 5th, which means you'll have 1 common tone. Let's see. First, I have to look at the last chord and see that I have the root already doubled. So now I'm going to need to put in the 3rd, which is right there. And I could, if I wanted to, triple the root. That would work. Oops, let me fix that. So I could triple the root and leave out the fifth. Sometimes it's okay to omit the fifth. You never want to omit the third, though, because the third tells you the quality, right? If it's major or minor, depending on if it's a flat 3 or not. But certainly, I could omit the fifth. Tripling the root is okay. The leading tone does like to resolve to do. That's why I have right here in the tenor A sharp to B. But since it's in an inner voice, remember, I can make it a little bit more exciting. And I can have the leading tone T resolve down to sol. And I could do that, like so. So that's probably how I would actually do that. All right, so this concludes this video for today. AP, please take out staff paper and copy down your homework this evening, which is going to be this 4-measure harmonic progression in 3/4. Please copy down the notes that are given and the figured bass sharp signs where they are written. And you will have to name the key and analyze the chords specified by the figured bass. Then compose a good melody line for each. Finally, fill in the alto and tenor parts to make a 4-part voice texture. And we'll be sharing our answers tomorrow in class. Don't forget to analyze the chords with Roman numerals. And don't forget about all of the principles that we've learned and all of the rules that need to be followed. Please copy this down and we'll share our answers tomorrow.